M1. The last general said the M1 ran on jet fuel. Well, typically it didn't run on. It runs on anything.
It has a turbine.
It runs on anything, and typically the Abrams ran on a mixture of diesel and regular gas, but it could run on men's cologne, kerosene or whatever. So he was lying on CNN purposefully, and for his own reasons. He wanted boots on the ground to support what possibly could be a Ukrainian offensive with the only weaponry, I believe, that can change the course of the war for Ukraine, which is modern composite armor tanks, which Poland now has. So is Poland going to either transfer that, or is it going to take on Russia itself? I don't know if you know this, but just recently it was announced that Poland is giving military weekend training to civilians. Their army is scheduled to double in the next several months. This is very serious.
Well, like with the
number of
Polish,
you talking about Poland?
With those Polish M1 tanks, they're not going to go into Ukraine unless the Poles crew them, because it's been talked about a lot, like Brian Barrelchick and all them guys. I was on a tank. 6 months was how long I was trained. When I got to my unit, I was trained as a loader, which is the least qualified person on the crew. So, I mean, unless they're going to go take crews and train them to, gunnery standards and then take those crews and put them into an M1, it's never going to work. I mean, they could train guys all day long, but you're just basically training the least qualified crewman on the tank, because the loader gets there, and then if he works hard, maybe he can become the driver. The driver will work hard, maybe he becomes the gunner. The gunner becomes the tank commander. The tank commander moves on. That's how it works. And just because I got trained 6 months.
Gentlemen,
What was your
gentlemen, sorry if I may interrupt, just so we can kind of close the thread here, because I think it was William who proposed the question of asking, so we can get acquainted who people here are. Right, so William is from Michigan, right? So can you tell us?
We want to ask everybody where they're from. We never finished asking everybody where they're from.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you could also, tell a little bit about
real quick, and then we can finish, since I asked the question about where we're from. The tank point, I've discussed this with people very close to Brian Berletic. He knows nothing about tanks. I was a tank crewman. I was a tank commander at one point. Were you a tank crewman?
Yeah, I was on the M1, M1A1.
Yeah. In addition to that, I also had a keen interest in it, so I had conversations with the mechanics and things like that. You said you were on the M1A1. You were 19 kilo?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it's a good tank. Don't get me wrong, but my point is, it's just the amount of training it would take for those guys to get up to par to be able to use that tank the way it was made to be used is just not possible. And the footprint
I can go into it. What? Yeah.
I mean, if you're a tank commander, you had to do battalion gunnery and you had to score, and you were top gun or not, and all the other crews and everything like that. Those guys are not going to transfer from a T-72 into an M1 and be anywhere near able to make that tank work like it needs.
This is an example. This is an example of information that could be refined. Okay, it takes about a month to train a armor crewman, right? Literally, I'm talking about realistically. For the basic training, for the AIT training. Yeah. AIT is 2 months. They did a program called On the Way Eagle, which I'm sure you're not aware of, but it was an expedited program to find out how quickly they could train a tank crewman. They did it in a month. They halved, it's about 10 weeks, right, for the AIT. They halved the time. Well, that they do this in all services to find out how quickly they can funnel people through the system. Well, I knew a guy at On the Way Eagle. I was in contact with a lot of officers. I went at the University of Arizona at the ROTC program, and I investigated a lot of this stuff. So, and I just asked more questions than most people, as well as being a 19 Echo and other things. But so you've got these people like Brian Berletic, for example. What he'll do is he'll go on the website, find the number of weeks, which it turns out, find the number of weeks the Army website, he'll says it takes to train a crewman. Well, that includes basic training. No, you don't get basic training. You get 4,000.
I know. I'm just saying it's a 6 months process with AIT and basic is what I'm saying. Because I went in February and I graduated in June, and that was Desert Storm time frame. We had an abbreviated AIT, but that's only they dropped like bayonet training, they dropped M16 qualification, and because you're on a tank. If you need a rifle, you're prepped anyway. So they cut stuff off like that, but you can. This is just an example. Time down. I'm just saying that when those guys get there, you're talking about somebody who's basic proficiency. I mean, they can operate all the stations. They're just not going to be like a trained crew that's going to operate well.
I guarantee you will have, if you take the right Ukrainians, which is they're going to take former armor crewmen, right? Who've looked through the reticle, who've shot rounds downrange in a T-72, right?
How many of those guys are left? So what they do is they're actually able to fight. How many trained crews are left that they can pull crews?
Plenty. Yeah, I mean, all they need is about 4,000 maximum, 500 minimum. Right? They've got a 500 million troops. They've got all the tank crewmen they need.
I'm talking about guys that were already on tanks. I mean, how many of those guys are alive right now that can be pulled together into a training group to be, transferred?
Out of 500,000 people, they've got the tanks. Take the crews off.
What I'm saying is, I'm talking about crews that already exist, not crews that shit. What the fuck?
Okay, well, we might disagree on this, okay? But what I'm saying is, if they bring these, the Polish have the armor.
No,
and
William.
It's a 20-to-1 kill ratio.
William, that's not what he's asking.
Composite tank.
That's not at all what he's asking. That's not at all what he's asking. He's asking, how are we going to get people who know? Where are we going to get the teachers for this? Who's going to teach them? We have all the tanks.
Who's going to teach them? Have you ever used it? Have you ever used a simulator? I have a tank simulator. They've got them.
And this is for the Ukrainians. This is for the Ukrainians.
Yeah, for the Ukrainians. I guarantee you right now.
Shall we proceed getting acquainted
on Abrams? I'm just guessing, but it happens. Anyways, we can get into it, but Brian Berletic, you're barking up the wrong street if you're trying to get your information from Brian Berletic. He just comes to the conclusion that he wants to. He's very good because he does a lot of research, but he comes to the conclusion that he wants to and then stops. He erases all context. It's not the way to get information, to have perspective. That's the wrong way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as the armor goes, we can get into it. I can write out a whole report on regarding this. But the kill ratio of a modern tank, either the K2 or the Abrams, which are the two tanks that Poland has, is 20-to-1. It's innumerable if non-exportable technology is added to it, such as satellite uplink. So again, this is just part of the information. This is.
Are you talking about sending these tanks? Are you talking about sending these tanks to Ukraine? Like that's not comparable. None of these tanks have ever been in that type of combat, though. This is like
none of the.
Are you going? What are we gonna say? Are we gonna say that the Abrams going to Iraq was like similar? Like, or is that what we're saying? Because
the Abrams in
20 to
Iraq,
1 in Syria
none-
is different.
none of the Abrams were destroyed by Iraqi tanks. Maybe they're maybe they're Trents.
but Iraqi tanks were like export variants of like Soviet equipment.
125
Like they had no
millimeter
optics.
smoothbore.
They didn't even have optics. They didn't even have optics.
Direct one tank, one Abrams, and this is the older composite armor, got hit a couple dozen times by several, probably about 7 Iraqi tanks. This is the story I heard, because I heard a lot of stories. A lot of my guys went over to Iraq and they came back. So they worked in different functions than just armor, but direct hits. The composite armor is impenetrable against the standard Russian round, which is a tungsten steel sabot round. You can look it up. Several direct hits, a couple dozen direct hits.
Okay.
It's impenetrable.
I'm still trying to understand
this is
something.
the information I'm talking about. We can
This-
have discussions
hold on.
about this, but you
Are
have
we
yeah.
talking about sending? So okay, we were talking about sending these tanks to Ukraine, right? And are we talking about arming the Ukrainian armed forces and then using these? I would imagine these would be spares, right? These tanks that we would give to Ukraine, and then use them.
your imagination. The
What
tanks
do
are
you-
there. We're not going to limit
Right.
ourselves. No force, which is okay. Let's just face it. The U.S. is running the show, right?
in Poland, yeah.
We'll start from there.
Yeah.
That's my assumption. So the U.S. is not going to limit itself to arming the Ukrainians with these tanks. It's got the Polish option. Poland now has the weapons are stacked up, right? Doubling their force, training civilians. The weapons are just backpiling. They're being front loaded with the new tanks. Those tanks can run right through Russia. It's one
Okay,
of the
why
few
haven't they
things
yet?
they have left.
Why haven't they yet?
You use your imagination. One of the probabilities for that.
Actually, I don't think I should have to use my imagination. You're the one arguing.
You shouldn't.
that
You shouldn't at all, to be honest.
You should be explaining why exactly this would be the perfect option.
There's plenty of options. You don't limit your options.
So I may have
In war,
misunderstood. I may have
You
misunderstood
have a
that.
plan
'cause
B. You have a plan C.
Yeah, of course,
Maybe
but
a
it
plan
sounded.
C. I don't know.
No, I'm. Yeah, definitely they
What's
do.
that?
No, I think I may have misunderstood because it sounded like you were saying if Ukraine magically got Ukrainian Abrams tanks, this conflict would be
Yeah,
over.
that's one possibility. So the problem, there's a couple problems. I mean, we can get into it quite a bit. One of the problems is having Western tanks dead on the battlefield, which there would be a few if we only had Ukraine do it. There's only 2 ways to go, and both of them include combined arms with tanks, with Patriot systems, with Paladin systems. They're all in Poland. Poland has enough tanks right now. They got 2 shipments, minimum 2 shipments, maybe 3 of Abrams. The first one was 250. Then they got K2s, 180. K2s, absolutely one of the best things on the battlefield. Every option with the M1, every weapons option, every the satellite uplink is cross platformed with the K2.
Yeah,
These are amazing tanks. I know exactly what they can do.
This
I've
is
even heard of some
classified
classified
Leo,
information
you're
with the
muted.
Abrams.
Leo.